Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey, it is time for the SuperShow podcast. Hello and welcome back. Jamie, I see you there with your face in your hands. What's wrong? Why
I didn't know I
so,
had the privilege of sharing a podcast with Dr. Seuss, but it's an absolute pleasure and a privilege, sir. I've always wanted to meet you and share my enthusiasm for green eggs and or ham.
I watched Horton Hears a Who yesterday, so, maybe that's why.
Ah,
Or maybe I was referencing the fact that we're going to be talking today about the Nintendo Alarmio. Alarmo? There's no E, is there?
there's
Alarmo.
no way. They might call it that in some regions. Like I can see the Italians finding Alarmio more palatable, but the rest of us normally just get the Alarmo.
I think I was thinking of like Slidario,
Oh,
like
like that's yeah. So
.io.
maybe if they bought a URL, it would be alarm.io. That I can see that working as well.
Maybe. We've not got a massive amount of news to talk about today. So rather than hit you with some big stories, we are going to hit you with a whole bunch of little bits, some tidbits. That's a horrible saying, isn't it? But some tidbits.
It works.
It
It's like
does work.
tapas for gaming news.
Oh, yes, it is tapas for gaming news. And I don't like tapas. So there you go.
But hang on a second. Saying you don't like tapas is like saying I don't like starters. What do you mean? That's just it's just a thing.
I like
It means
starters
everything.
because they're followed
Okay.
by a main course.
So
Tapas.
you don't like tapas because they're small plates that never get followed up on by a big plate.
It's that if you really like something, there's never enough of it, and if you really like something, chances are other people really like it, and you often are sharing stuff at tapas, so you always end up sharing the nicest part, and you get a little tiny little bit, and you're like, oh, that was good. I would like to have had a whole plate of that. So
Oh, I see. So you're in your mind having tapas is a bit like, let's say you went to an Indian restaurant and someone said, "What if we ordered 8 starters between us and no one got any mains?" You'd be a bit like, "What? Like, what are we doing here?" Okay,
yes.
I
I
see that.
I now see the error I've made because Rodrigo in chat is saying you don't
Chat,
like
yeah.
tapas, Rodrigo's quite a tapasy name, so I may have offended his
Oh, yeah.
offended him. I'm sorry, Rodrigo. I love tapas. I love the food of tapas. I don't like the sharing of the food. Or I tell you what
Yeah.
else it is. I'm not good at being selfish when so I don't want to like hog it. So I feel really compelled to like share with other people. And when it comes to even getting a dish, even if that's like I really liked, but someone else had already ordered it, and everyone's like, "Oh, let's get a bit of everything," I'd feel compelled to get something else that other people might enjoy as well.
Oh, wow.
So
See, that's very selfless of you. I don't think I'd go that far. I, I definitely identify as someone who has some weird quirks around sharing food, but most of them are for the sake of self-preservation rather than helping anyone else. The only time it gets really weird is that I I can get like blue balls, I guess, from food when I've had a little bit of something I want more of. And
yes,
sometimes I think the workaround, to avoid blue balls in such a scenario is to not have anything. And so one of the situations that you and I both dealt with multiple times at a previous place of employment was someone would say, "Hey, all 80 of you come down to the ground floor. I've bought 4 pizzas." And
yep.
we're going to stand around and so there's going to be an office update or some piece of news that everyone needs to hear and everyone help themselves. And it's like, I'm sitting there doing the maths, like 80 people, 4 pizzas, the rugby scrum that, begins to develop in the mouth of each box. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm not even going to bother. Could I probably get away with like a slice of Hawaiian or veggie pizza or a veggie supreme if I wrestled my way through? Yeah, probably. But it's a bit like being Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. Like, you're just not going to get into the one you want.
You're not going
Buzz
to
is
get
going
any
to eat it all.
4 cheese pizza.
Exactly. And then you go home and you can have a whole cheese pizza just for me. Buzz, your girlfriend. Woof.
Woof. No, I'm totally with you. But then okay, but this happens to me as well. I think I'm similar to you in that I will then I'll eat a slice of the Hawaiian, I'll eat a slice of the vegetarian because I'm like I eat any like almost anything. But then I do have things I prefer. But then if I know if a lot of other people are like, oh, but I don't like that, so I need to have because I've been with people who are like, I need to have some of that because I don't like that, and I'm like, well, hold
Right.
on, I prefer that.
Okay.
The fact that
So
I will eat it just because I'm a fat bloater who likes food, that I shouldn't be penalised. Like maybe you're lying. Maybe I dislike it just as much as you do, but I'm just not as forthright in my condemnation of the vegetarian pizza. Maybe I should be like, no, you get out of here. I don't like that. I don't like that either. You're not having the
Maybe
nice
you
one.
should put your foot down a little bit. I think you're being too nice. If you were in a scenario where there were a meeting about to take place and you had done the maths ahead of time, because every sane person would, and there's less than one slice of pizza per capita, but you get given a tip off about this meeting, so you're there first, and you've got a pepperoni or a veggie. Are you telling me you take a slice of veggie for the sake of the people that? Okay,
No,
that's
no,
good to
no.
know.
If I'm there early and there's a whole pepperoni pizza, it's almost like what's it like where you plausible deniability. I can comfortably take a slice of the pepperoni and be like, I don't know what happens after me. Maybe they're all vegetarians. Maybe they all want veggie. Even though I know that's probably not true. So I can convince myself that in that situation it's fine. However, if there was like 3 pieces of pizza left, if there was two veggie and like 1 pepperoni, and I knew that I love pepperoni, but these other 2 people want the pepperoni as well, I'd be like, it's fine, you take them. I love the vegetarian, it's fine.
But then you've stumbled into the next problem, which is the one left debate. I had that at work the other day, where there are these cookies they put out at lunchtime, and by the time I'd finished my meal and put my plate away, because we have like a cafeteria basically at work, there was 1 cookie left, and I was like, I can't take it. What if someone watches me take it? I'll be the guy who ate the last cookie.
I can take the last cookie happily if no one else is. If I don't think anyone's watching. If I'm with other people and there's the situation where someone goes for the cookie and then you go for the cookie and you go, oh no, you have it, and they go, oh no, you have it, please. I'm like, no, honestly, I don't even want it. Like, I don't need the cookie. You have the cookie. In that situation, it's not worth it. I'm like, yeah, I'm
unless maybe your hands meet as you both reach for the cookie and it's the start of an inspiring love story.
Maybe, and then me and Dave from accounting skip off into the sun together.
And you tell your adopted children in the future. Did we ever tell you the story of how we met? There was 1 cookie left in the cafeteria.
Yeah. There you go. Before we go any further, I should probably say that we are, in fact, a video game podcast. We're on YouTube and Twitter at SuperShow Pod. Not even it's still in our document. It still says Twitter. It should be X. Now that
no, I like calling it Twitter.
King Elon is doing everything in the world that needs to happen. Well, when I say that, I mean about space travel.
I thought robots. You were referring to like having humans controlling robots and pretending that they're actual robots, which is definitely something the world needs more of.
Is that what happened? Is that what they did with the Optimus?
I think that's purely speculative on my part. I have seen suggestions and allegations that some of that, what was perceived or was demonstrated or shown off as, robotics and advanced AI was in fact, just human controlled, or at least human assisted or human operated or something.
Oh, okay. Let me say, okay, let me come at it from this angle. If the robots were actually doing the motions and the movements themselves of like pulling the drinks and walking around, all of that uncontrolled, so that was them doing it themselves. But so the voice, the communication stuff that they had sounded super like sketchy. It sounded like it was a human. Like, it didn't sound like AI. I was kind of blown away because I've got the new ChatGPT voice assistant mode on my phone now, because I've got like they released the new one, because I've got Pro ChatGPT, and it's so quick, like genuine. It's really impressive, but it still sounds just like ChatGPT. It's just a bit quicker. I was amazed at how lifelike the voice sounded for the Optimus robot. So if you tell me that those are humans responding, I don't really care. Like having access to an LLM that can process that level of information to that degree to have free flowing conversations, but I don't care. Like, I'm not watching that for a voice assistant. I'm watching it for what they can physically do. But if you tell me that there's people controlling the movements, then I'm annoyed.
I've heard allegations or suggestions that the movements were being controlled, because I think there was one particular illustration of the robot capabilities of these, whatever you want to call them, of these robots, I guess. And one of them was, I think, playing charades with members of the public, and there was a suggestion that it wasn't real or that was being if not entirely operated by humans, then at least assisted by humans. And there's also a part of me that's like, It seems maybe silly to compare the two because they are trying to achieve ultimately very different things and saying, well, company X can't be doing this because company Y isn't. But there's also a part of my brain that's like, Boston Dynamics have been around for over 30 years, and a good chunk of that time they've been funded by Google, of all companies, and they're still basically just making dogs that don't fall over. Then Elon comes out of nowhere, it's like, yeah, how about you play charades with a human? It's like, really? Did we just make that leap behind closed doors from a guy that makes, electric cars
I wasn't
and
behind
spends
closed
too much
doors.
time tweeting?
We've had Bumblebee, Optimus Gen 1, and this is Optimus Gen 2, is it? So there've been a few, but I'm with you.
I genuinely thought you were doing a Transformers joke there. I thought you were about to just list off the names of a bunch of Transformers.
No,
and
that's
be like,
that's what he's named them.
my bad.
He's named the different iterations of his robots. But you make a good point. Joe, I will say, did you see the SpaceX rocket that got caught by the stand they did the other day, which was very cool and stuff like that. So I'm going to dub him King Elon, even if he has lied to us about the robots.
Please just don't dub him King Elon. Like,
he's pushing us toward the dystopian sci-fi future of which my childhood promised, and I want to know when and where I can hand over my passport and keys to the AI overlords. That's what I'm looking forward to.
You'll be first in line.
I'll be first in line for the bargaining when they make us one.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe it's a good idea. They might take pity on you and like they'll go light relative to the punishments that the rest of us get. We'll be ripped limb from limb while you just get some like implants and become their version of a house pet.
I'll be just a brain in a jar. Like,
Yeah,
we went light on you. You're a brain in a jar. So there we go.
Yeah. You'd be used as like a reverse language model where they're like, this is actually a human model and we use it as like an intentionally antiquated LLM to see how humans used to think and respond and behave. Like, ask it a question. It might not know the answer at all.
Yeah, maybe. That's very true.
They're like, fascinating. An idiot is what you're trying to say. Yes. That's what the humans would refer to them as.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, we are a video game podcast.
Sorry.
On from X. We're also on Spotify, iTunes. We're on Google Podcasts. You can also find us on PaisleyRadio.com. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Repeated Mondays at 10 p.m. I want to give a bit of a shout out right now, though, to some people that have joined us in chat because they are. I don't know a good analogy for them. They're like my chirpy little peas in a pod that I can look over at while they're like a little contained group of little chirpers that I can't see. All I can see is what they say, and it makes me happy and makes me smile as we do the podcast, and I can see their little comments. So I imagine it's like a little. I don't know what it's like. It's like the little bots inside your controller with the PlayStation 5, and they're all having a little chat, and they're just sitting there. I can see the little.
You've rounded up all the Astro Bot chatters, and now you're rattling around your DualSense, and you can hear them inside, and they're all screaming.
Yeah, they're having a lovely little chat, and they're giving me little bits of information. Good screams, yeah, good screams. I'm going to name some of them. So we've got Magni, Rodrigo, 69DJ. Oh god, I'm going to butcher it again. He shared it last time. It's Wesley Thibodeau. I think it was something like that.
I think it's different every time you say it.
Leo Dunlop, Cal Barto, JW Foster. We've got the Funky Penguin, John Meehan, Bill Caesar, Samuel Brightbooker, Butcher, Brighton Butcher. What is everyone's? I can't do names. What can I say? Thank you, everyone, for joining us in chat.
Imagine if Jonesy was like a successful Twitch streamer and had to thank someone every time he got like a sub or someone followed. Imagine the number. No, because
we have real people with real names. If it was on Twitch, it would be something stupid like we've got Bebop39 joining us, and we've got Flimini Flam. It'd be easy because they make up such stupid names on Twitch.
I see what you mean. So what you're saying is that real names are the problem.
See, 69 DJs nailed it. I think it was Thibodeau.
Oh, that sounds right.
That does sound right.
It sounds vaguely. I don't know. I'm going to say Canadian. But I don't know.
Yes,
but maybe it's just because it sounds like Trudeau-esque.
Yeah, it does. It does sound a bit Trudeau. Who's the dude who's not Justin Trudeau? He's an actor. He was married to Jennifer Aniston. Justin Theroux. Is it Theroux? Yeah. I always get him confused with Justin Trudeau. I don't know why, because they're both called Justin, and both the second names are both kind of similar. But whenever I see his name, I always think of Justin Trudeau, who is not the son of. Who's the guy?
You'll get there.
Fidel Castro. who's not the son
Fidel
of,
Castro.
He's not the son of Fidel Castro.
I don't know how we jumped to Fidel Castro.
Have you not heard that conspiracy theory?
Justin Trudeau's related to Fidel Castro.
That he's his son.
What the fuck?
Have you never?
I've never heard that. No, I've never heard that one.
Rabbit hole.
That is rogue. Is it a fun rabbit hole at least? Is it worth going down?
It is fun. It's a little bit fun. It's kind of boring. I think it extends just purely from the fact that Justin Trudeau looks a little bit like Fidel Castro, and that everyone likes to say that his mum and dad were a bit loosey goosey around the time of his birth.
Oh, right, okay.
Which is so silly.
There's loosey goosey, and then there's like having Fidel Castro's child. Like, I don't know.
No. So they also met. Apparently, they did also meet, and it was around the sort. So people have gone, oh, well, they met once. It doesn't matter that they met like a month before his birth or like 14 months for his birth. It was like, no, they've met. They met in the 60s, and that means he's his dad or whenever he was born, 70s. But it's fun.
That reminds me of that weird subplot in Meet the Fockers where Ben Stiller thinks that he might have like got the old maid pregnant because there's that weird mechanic that is like a Hispanic version of him. That's a weird deep cut.
Yeah.
People probably don't remember me.
Barely even remember that. No, I vaguely recall it.
It's because he goes home and his parents are embarrassing him because I think he lost his virginity to their Hispanic maid who's like has giant jugs. And he's like, well, yeah, I did. And then all of a sudden, this like kid, well, not a kid, like let's say like late teens, early 20s guy who's the spitting image of Ben Stiller, but like half Hispanic, shows up. And he's like, oh shit, I think I might have had a... And then Robert De Niro starts to believe the conspiracy and does like a secret paternity test by like...
I don't remember that part.
I would rewatch Meet the Fockers like last year, maybe even earlier this year, and that's a rogue film. Yeah.
So like you'd probably be quite hard to get it past nowadays if you're like, we've also got this weird subplot, and they're like, okay.
Even just the A plot, like imagine sitting down to a meeting and someone says, I want to cast Dustin Hoffman and Barbara Streisand as parents whose surnames are Fokker and they're obsessed with sex.
And she's going to be Martha. She's going to be Martha Fokker, and they're like, no, I'm not making this film.
Yeah. I want to have a sequence where at one point I'm now getting potentially my wires crossed between actual Meet the Fockers and like the parody movie that I think was just called Date Movie that included it. But is it in Meet the Fockers where his circumcised foreskin ends up in the cheese fondue?
I don't remember that either. Maybe.
Okay, I might be getting my wires crossed, but yeah. Needless to say, Meet the Fockers is a curious case of a 20-year-old now comedy film that has aged questionably.
Something else which is going to be questionable. We've got a super chat, $4.99 super chat coming from. He's done this because I'm now going to have to say his name like we were on Twitch stream. From Samuel Brighton Butcher. It sounds German. Brighton Butcher. Samuel Brighton Butcher. That's what I'm going with. Thank you so much, Samuel Brighton Butcher. That's what I'm going with for this super chat. You are a legend. Yeah, and I've probably butchered your name, and I'm really sorry about that, but. That's the way
that's money well spent as far as I'm concerned, getting your name butchered by the one and only Jonesy. I'll just say thank you, Samuel. I'll keep it simple.
Yeah, you did. You kept it easy. I was assuming that's why he did it, was because he wanted me to say his name. So I would have felt like I was making it cheap if I didn't at least have a good go. But there we go.
It's a service we're offering now. Get your name read out and subsequently butchered by Jonesy. Yeah.
I should ask ChatGPT how to say it. I bet it nails it first time.
But it would because it would give you like a broken down phonetic pronunciation. I was about to say something really stupid and say, but it would still be letters. But I kind of missed the point of how pronunciations work.
Nah, you're right. Anyway, should we move on to our first news topic?
Let's do it.
Of quite a few, because like I said, we're gonna keep them light and airy. Which is why we're having a bit of fun with every element of the show this week, because we're going to try and push this out for an hour and a half, and we'll see if we manage to get there. So the first news story this week is coming in that Nintendo have announced some brand new hardware, and we were not expecting this. It is very exciting. It is not the Switch 2. It is a brand new sub $100 piece of kit from Nintendo, very exciting, that features 5 games.
Okay, now I see where you're going with this. This is very leading, Jonesy.
But it's an alarm clock. It's not. You can't play anything on it. It is an alarm clock. You can buy it. It sits next to your bed like an alarm clock does. It tells you the time, and when you're supposed to get up, it plays some funky tunes, specifically from 5 different games. But we were not expecting it, and when it came out the other day, I think we both saw the little trailer for it. I'm guessing, and I thought it was pretty cool. I at first thought it wasn't. First thought like, who is this for? And then I ended up thinking like, damn, that is kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, and I like that it's a little bit technological, but it's not super. It's not so basic. It's not just an alarm clock. We were saying, like we were chatting before the pod. It's got these what do we even call them? Body sensors, I suppose. Body sensors. It can scan you, and it knows sort of what you're doing in bed. So if you roll over or you move about, it chimes and it makes different noises depending on the game settings that you've got set on. And it can even tell when you get out of bed, and it plays you a different song as was like a celebration for the fact that you have arisen. What do you? So what are you thinking, Jamie? What are you thinking of it? Is this something on your radar?
I had two thoughts when I saw it. The first thought I had was, you know, the little sound effect that plays every time that Mario collects a coin.
Yes.
I wonder if it would play that sound effect for every stroke if I had a morning wank. That's the first thing I wanted to get to the bottom of, is how would the Alarmo? Yeah, exactly. Kind of like winning the jackpot on a slot machine. I'd want to see how the Alarmo reacts to my handling of my morning wood. And
when you finish, it goes, yippee!
Yeah, exactly that. Or I feel like with me, it would be more like I'd somehow unlock the Wario mode. Like, because I don't know. I feel like I give off more of that energy.
And then you get so addicted to it for too long that when you then get with an actual woman, at the impending point, you're like, look, I'm really sorry, but can you just go wah? Because if you don't, I'm never going to be able to finish.
You know, I read a Reddit post once about a guy who started experimenting with putting his finger up his arse, and got to the point where he realized that, like, he got so into stuff happening in and around his bumhole that he basically couldn't come without it, and he was worried. He was basically asking for advice and worried that he'd like ruined his sex life indefinitely. And now I'm sitting here thinking, wondering what's worse, excuse me. Like, if you would, like, with a girl for the first time, saying to her, you need to put something up my bum or I can't come, or saying to her, I need you to pretend to be Wario.
What the other side of this is, though, is what about if you're in bed with a lady and the alarm clock is on, and she's on top, she's doing the business, and then it's making like the Splatoon sound every time she moves.
Oh, I forgot about Splatoon.
She's like, what the hell is...
It would be like the ketchup versus mayonnaise Splatfest all over again. If anyone needed reminding. Do you know what the second thought I had, though?
What's the second thought?
On a far more sensible note, my second thought was that because I am, inherently lazy, and I'm always looking for shortcuts in life, even where those shortcuts do not exist, I'm still always, to a certain degree, fascinated by technology that seeks to gamify everyday life and kind of chores or things we just have to do to some extent. And sometimes I've done that with Nintendo themselves. Like, I never went all in on like the Wii Balance Board or Ring Fit Adventure or anything like that. Right. But I've always been curious about their ideas saying, hey, how can we bring our whether it's our IPs or our iconography or even our software expertise to exercise, or to, in this case, getting out of bed. And I'm always curious to see what those results are like. And you know what? At the moment, I don't have a devoted or standalone alarm clock. I use my phone like a lot of people, and I'm totally happy with the way that my phone functions as an alarm clock. I even have an app that makes me do some basic arithmetic puzzles before I can turn the alarm off, because I find that helps get me up. But if you want to offer me like a Nintendo version of that, like, sure, why not? Price tag? Maybe not day one, but I don't know. If we got towards Christmas and someone out there with a big budget really didn't know what to get me, then maybe.
I'm kind of torn on the budget aspect because at first glance, $100 alarm clock is like, well, that's ridiculous. But then when you actually like look at it and see what it does, so it's detecting the movement. It automatically detects when you get out of bed. So as we said, it uses like 5 different games. So it has music from and sound effects from Super Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 3, Pikmin 4, and Ring Fit Adventure, which are going to be available at launch, and it's going to have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Animal Crossing New Horizons that come later as DLC. But you also get little animations on the screen, so it is not just an alarm clock, it is like a little color display. So when you kind of break it all down and you think about the fact of like, look, it's nearly 2025, like inflation's been a real bitch in the last sort of few years, stuff is more expensive, I'm kind of like, what?
I think I got caught off guard by someone using it's 2025 and inflation's been a real bitch in the context of justifying the purchase of a £90 alarm clock.
Not buying it, I'm justifying like the pricing of it. Like I know people.
Oh yeah, like they can do whatever they want. They're Nintendo.
But if you saw that product in a shop, I think 10 years ago, I think we'd be rightfully would say that is absolutely ludicrous. But it feels like in this day and age, that is probably what it should be, which is gross. I will give you that. But
I don't know. I think I would need to see just how effective and accurate, responsive, interactive, and whatever other words you can think of, the various features actually are. Like, if it is a little bit ropey, or even if it's not ropey, it's just even if it just becomes another one of those Nintendo ideas where you go, oh, that makes sense, and then no one buys it and then it disappears really quickly. Like when they did Labio, like the cardboard creations, or when they did the real world Mario Kart with the RC cars and stuff like that.
Right.
All things that they announce and you go, not only can I kind of see the market for that, but it's Nintendo. And then, a year later, it's like, I know people who threw away and or recycled their Nintendo Labo, cardboard creations because there wasn't that much longevity out of pretending to be a big cardboard robot or playing a little cardboard piano. There's more longevity in an alarm clock. But you mentioned this earlier when you were talking about theoretically buying it for a younger audience. There's also the element of spending £90 on something or $100 on something that would incorporate itself into your life in a nice way, but you can't really use it. Like on the day you buy it, you'd be sat there going, I guess I'm going to hear this tomorrow. I'll put it down and walk away.
I'm really looking forward in 16 hours time when I get to actually use this new thing I bought.
Exactly.
Do you know what made me suddenly think of when you were talking about was those people who go onto like TikTok Live and they do the real life NPCs where when you buy like a bunch of grapes or like do a thing, then they have to do a movement or an action. There was one that everyone shared. It was I can't remember her name, but she was like munch every time someone said like a pizza. She'd be like, "Oh, pizza!" And then did you ever see that? No,
I didn't. I remember the Miles Morales one who would get angry.
But people were getting to flip.
Yeah, people would buy too much of the one that made him jump off screen, and then back on. And I think he would break character at times and be like, "Why the fuck do people keep buying? Stop buying it!" And
he was trying to get mods to kick him. I think he was like, "Kick these people."
And I think he got mugged a couple of times because he would do it on the streets of New York. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. But the ones who do it and they do that, I'm like, it's almost like making that your real life. Because everything you do is like a little chirp or a little noise, and so you're sitting at home and it's doing these little like weird, Mario Odyssey noises, and you're sat there. It's almost like you're in one of those TikTok live streams being an NPC. I think it would it might drive me a little insane after like a week, and I just have to throw it at the wall and like smash it to pieces.
Exactly. Which that's a fair use of an alarm clock. That's like something right out of a movie. Just picking up your alarm clock from bed and throwing it at the wall at the end of the room.
I always wanted one. Did you ever see those ones that's what you did? So it was like a football with the clock set in it, and to turn it off, you had to lob it at the wall. But if you didn't throw it hard enough, it wouldn't shut off. And then you'd have to get up and retrieve it and throw it again. Yeah, it sounds horrendous. But I always wanted one, but I didn't have.
There's a bit of this in Alarmo because it does ramp up the noise that it makes if you take too long to get up. But I do genuinely think, and this is why I use the app I use, that there is a market for alarms that you cannot turn off unless it knows for certain you're awake.
Yes. I'm terrible for snooze. I'm a terrible snoozer.
Yes, exactly. So the one I use, like, you would not be able to snooze until you answered 5 arithmetic questions in a row. And like they might be like basic, like 36 plus 12. Sometimes they're basic enough that you can actually do them and still be half asleep, and it's really annoying.
48.
But yes, that's correct. But yeah, imagine having to do that 5 times. And there are other modes in it as well. Like one is a steps one, where you'd have to, with your phone, do like 20 steps before you can turn the alarm off.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
And so it's interesting stuff where, like, yeah, if you want us to shut up, you have to get out of bed, and it works. So that's what I'll say there.
Oh, okay. I like it. I like it. Keep it tuned here. We might be getting one of us might get an Alarmo. It'll probably be me, but no. But like we said before the pod, like I was like, I wouldn't get one for me, but you made the very good point. I don't have to get one for me. I can get one for the kids, and then I can say it's for the children, and then I can have a play with it, and then get really bored with it.
Yeah, you could do a whole thing about you guys are reaching the age where you have to start taking responsibility and learning about waking yourself up. And how the later you go to bed, the more tired you are in the morning, because this will put you in a good footing for later in life.
It's very true, man. I like the way you delivered that as well. Like you're getting ready for dadship. You're practicing.
Oh yeah. Ever since mine left my life.
You're just like, no, now I need to practice. I've got.
No, I was like, I'm not gonna do the same. No, it was meant to be like a going for cigarettes joke, and it got like dark quickly. I said, don't worry, just move on.
Well, to a bunch of people that hopefully their dads are in their lives. No, I'm joking. I want to give a shout out to some pretty awesome people. I am, of course, talking about our Patreons. Who have gone over to patreon.com/SuperShow, and they have supported us by dropping as little as $2 a month to join our Discord, or maybe even going for one of the higher tiers where they can get to see some extra content behind the scenes, which we haven't done for a long time. We do need to update that and put some more stuff up there. We have been lax little bitches. But if I can find my little clicker thing right now.
I was about to call it the summer slump, but I looked down and my computer told me it's mid-October, so it's the post-summer slump now.
I can't believe it's that late in the year. Jesus
you notice that it's like pitch black outside by 7 p.m. now, Jonesy, and also how you've had to turn the central heating on.
I did this week. I turned it on.
Don't I know it?
You're absolutely right. And do you know what? I'm a little bit hot as I sit here in my hoodie.
I am as well.
Yeah.
I might unzip it soon.
Oh, mine's a pull on. I was just thinking about what's the etiquette of removing a hoodie midstream without like revealing everything underneath. And
see, when you get fat, you get techniques for these kind of things. And one of mine is I tuck my t-shirt under my overhang, so it's weighed down by my belly. And
clever.
And then I can. It sometimes still goes up my back a little bit
without doing the big reveal in the middle of the office.
People see the right side of me, and a little bit of flesh never hurt anyone.
That's very true.
If a colleague catches a glimpse of a bit of skin, leave something to the imagination. But
give them a wink as you take the hoodie off and go. I think
if I took my hoodie off centrally and then winked at a coworker, I'd be talking to HR by the end of the day.
Hey, never say never. Anyway,
we never talked about why me and Chris had to leave that company. Now people know.
Anyone who wants to laugh, if you might not be bothered to do this, but I've done it a couple of times because it's made me laugh. There is on Reddit someone had said whatever happened to the All Time Gaming YouTube channel, and I went onto that channel and someone on there was a little bit of a conversation. There was not many comments, maybe it was like 10 comments or something, people trying to answer this. Some people just saying like, oh yeah, I don't know, I used to watch that, and they just disappeared. The whole channel's gone. But then one of the comments was Jamie got cancelled and they had to remove the channel, and it just makes me laugh every time because I was like, yeah, if one of us got cancelled it would have been Jamie. Actually, probably wouldn't.
To be fair, if one of us had to be cancelled, yeah, it probably would have been me. But
it wouldn't. It probably would have been Chris. I reckon.
Actually, Chris.
I don't know why.
I think actually that Chris definitely had moments where he was in moods where it definitely could have happened. But then I'll also say that for as much as we were edited by ourselves, I should add, for the overwhelming majority of the time that we produced content, we were also regularly edited by third parties, including women and people of colour.
True.
And also for the whole last year of that channel's life, we went live on YouTube probably on average like for 4 hours a week. Not all of us, but nothing slipped out. Because we're not freaks. Like you look online at the moment, especially like I feel sorry for anyone that kind of grew up identifying with the Minecraft community, for example. But there are a lot of freaks out there, and I always say to people, we did the reverse. We were normal people who got normal jobs, who ended up being asked to make content. We weren't people who sat in our bedroom saying, I wish we were YouTubers. We were just people who happened to be editors as a profession in a company where, if you were there long enough, someone said, hey, do you want to be in front of a camera? Because we're not going to pay someone to.
Yes, exactly. We've got there's a couple of comments in chat saying that it would have been Chris. Yeah, I think it would have been. I don't know what it would have been. I'm not going to go that far as to like calling him out and saying it would have been this type of thing. But yeah, I think he would have. I think you're right. It would have been like a bad day. Something would have gone wrong, and then he would have said or done something, and it would have been like. But no.
Yeah, I like the idea that you know how so Chris, for anyone, I'm sure people are listening to this have all seen, goes by Hot Panic a lot online now, and that was a term that originated from, I think Chris was playing, I want to say it was Anthem, but I might be wrong. He was playing something on stream on his own, and at one point became aware of the fact that he was getting lost and wasn't making forward progress, and kind of got in his own head about the fact that, oh no, like I'm not doing enough, like I'm getting lost, and he started to feel the titular Hot Panic. I like the idea of Chris having like a Hot Panic episode during a stream that he's on his own with no outlet for like bouncing jokes off someone or anything like that. And then all of a sudden he says something he regrets.
I think maybe it would have. I don't know how it would have happened. He would have accidentally flashed, like in a Hot Panic, and then would have been pulled, and it would have been.
Oh god, I like it because there are so few ways for a fully dressed man to accidentally flash a camera. So now I'm just imagining the dynamics of. I don't know, maybe Chris decided to wear tracksuit bottoms that day and things were just a little bit too elasticated and like something I don't know, like, flopped out over the top.
Oh, don't you know what he falls over the back of his chair, like but upside down. The jogging bottoms get pulled down. It's just full bore cocking the camera.
Oh god.
Oh man. Sorry, Chris. When you listen to the audio version of this, and you're like, "What the hell are they talking about?" This has never happened, but that I can imagine that happening. But yeah, I apologize.
Imagine it happening. Yeah, I'm enjoying imagining it happening, not because Chris's cock and balls are out, but because it's just a funny scenario. Actually, maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, a bit of both for sure. Okay, there are some names on screen right now. I would also like to give a shout out to some people as well. So I would like to give a shout out to Aaron Cameron, Athletic Gravy, Brimstone, Ice Knock Rock Salt, Jesper Camden Nielsen, Pastors Guild, Xander GTI, and the big dogs, the members of the board, the guys whose jogging bottoms would never fall down and have their cock shown. It's Brett Z, aka Shell Shock, Geometric Potter, Hacksaw Book Reed, Manuel Guerrero, and Peaswad. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for supporting us. And for not having any, acts of nudity on the internet to get yourselves cancelled.
Yes.
Still being around. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Oh, I feel bad now. I have to say sorry to Chris when I see him.
Nah, he'll
you've put that out there.
He'll see the funny side.
You've put that out there in the universe, Jonesy. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully while he's streaming on Hot Panic on Twitch.
I'm looking up as well. You've got me curious. I'm now on Reddit saying the comment that says Jamie got cancelled and they had to shut down the channel. Now they have a channel called SuperShow has 8 upvotes. Who's finding a dead subreddit for a small YouTube channel that's 5 years old, finding a comment that's an untrue comment about me getting cancelled and upvoting it?
Must be true.
It's got more upvotes than the comment that says it's dead and deleted.
I think it's because it's true. I think they know more than we do. You were cancelled and you don't remember.
I wasn't cancelled.
Imagine you went for a job and they said, "We're really sorry, we can't give you the job because you were cancelled from your." And you're like, "No, I wasn't." And they're like, "Well, we saw it on Reddit and it had 8 upvotes, so it's probably true."
See, that's everyone's worst nightmare anyway, and that's just with regular social media, let alone a subreddit. Also, I love that the only purpose this subreddit now serves is for people who are confused and in the wrong place, asking irrelevant questions. There's a post on the All-Time Gaming subreddit from 7 days ago saying, "Best mini LED TV for gaming." Hello, I'm trying to decide which a mini LED to buy for gaming, and I'm thinking about a Hisense H8N, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's the only thing it's good for.
They should
I never,
speak to a good friend, Steph, friend of the show.
they should.
Tech
They should.
Nuovo, Tech Reviews. He can tell you what sort of monitor you want for your gaming.
He might have reviewed it. You'd have to go and look at the channel.
That is very
But
true.
yeah, that's the risk you run for having a very relaxed relationship with your audience, where they're allowed to make fun of you, which I presume that commenter was. I think I haven't checked in a while, but ASB64's profile picture on X might still be me sitting on the toilet, which he asked permission for, and I said yes. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, there you go. Right, should we move on to our next mini story? This is not that big a story at all, but I think one of the reasons I wanted to mention this was because I'm a big fan of this franchise. It's called Tron. Tron Catalyst had a trailer released, I believe it was yesterday. It's a new isometric action game from Bithnell Games, who were the guys behind Thomas Was Alone and John Wick Hex. And they've got a new game in the Tron universe, which is going to be coming out next year. As I said, it's isometric. It's a story-driven game. It's going to be on PC, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and it's coming via Devolver Digital, whom I do love. I love Devolver. I also love Annapurna Interactive as well. I know they've had a bit of a shit time lately, but I like those guys publishing games from like indies and stuff and smaller developers, which is pretty wicked. It's going to be coming from Devolver Digital's Big Fan Games publishing label. It's going to be coming in 2025, which when I first heard that, I was like, oh, come on, guys. You can get it out quicker than that. And then I realised that quicker than that, that's not that long.
Oh yeah, you are not announcing games for 2024 anymore. That ship has sailed. But yeah, I thought this looked okay as well. I thought the combat looked a little bit stiff. And
yeah,
I don't know.
It's very disc based, where you have the light ring and you're like lobbing it at people and stuff. It did look a little stiff.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that's because with games like this where they're trying to do a lot, because they've also got some light cycle sections. I wonder if that's because of the engine that they're running and how it works with regard to like trying to cover every element of that game and that world.
Very possibly. And like you said before, you mentioned that this is a kind of a story-driven title. A lot of Bithell Games' previous titles, I think one of which was actually essentially a Tron visual novel that came out at some point. Like I don't remember how long ago. Tron Identity. They've done stuff in the past that is almost entirely, story or narrative driven. I remember when they did like that Subsurface Circular or all of those games. Again, very narrative heavy. So I guess maybe combat like this. I never actually played John Wick X, but I think between that and this, they maybe still finding their feet, and the combat's not going to be the biggest emphasis. I will say to your point that the light cycle stuff looked better. I thought that looked cool. It just. Maybe just the animations and the fluidity of the combat didn't strike me as amazing. But I also will second what you say, that like the disc-based combat, I think that could be a really cool idea. It looked like there was kind of an element of, aiming the disc that you throwing it, then proceeding to do more sort of like melee-based combat. The disc would then kind of like maybe bounce off one enemy or multiple enemies. And it looked like when it came back to you, you could almost do like a combo extending like deflect, where maybe rather than catching and reflowing the disc, you're like deflecting your disc or other people's discs. I've got to pronounce that S, otherwise this becomes a very different game. But yeah, it's cool. And the Tron universe is rad. And for as long as Tron Ares remains a questionable Jared Leto vehicle, this might be the best piece of Tron media we get in 2025. So let's see.
Yeah, Tron's been around. So I loved the first Tron film. Whenever it would come on TV as a kid, like I was one that I had to watch because it blew my mind. I thought it was amazing. Like I suppose it was revolutionary in the way that it looked and how it worked. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm really happy that they've carried that franchise on. It's gone a bit weird, like with Legacy and some of the newer stuff. Like it's gone a little bit. There's more.
I'd have paid you as a big Legacy fan. I don't know why.
I quite like the simplicity of the original Tron. Like I do like Legacy, but for example, when they started bringing in like, oh, the programs are going to a disco, and I'm like, what? They're supposed to be programs inside of a computer system. They're not hanging out and like going to dances and getting off with each other. Like this is a bit weird. I quite like the simplicity of the original Tron, where it was an analogy, wasn't it? It was, this is inside the computer. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think my Word docs are like going around the back of the CPU and getting a RISD from like a JPEG file. It's a very different world that they're sort of trying to create.
See, now that you put it that way, and knowing that you have at times been a stickler for how the sci and the fi in sci-fi have been kind of have kind of bounced off each other, that makes sense. Do you know what? Weirdly enough, I think the reason I have in my head that you're a Tron Legacy fan is actually nothing to do with Tron Legacy. It's the fact that that director, Joseph Kosinski, who is now the Top Gun and soon to be F1 guy, when I first met you, you guys were all talking about how much you liked Oblivion, the Tom Cruise film that he directed. And whilst Oblivion and Tron Legacy are very different films, with massively different settings, there are still kind of like elements of Kaczynski's visual style and visual ethos that I think are like present and shared between the two. And I just don't know if I've ever met anyone else in my life who likes Oblivion as much as you guys in the office. I just remember I've started at this new production company and all the editors like Oblivion. Weird.
Do you know what it is? It's so rare that you find like good, actually decent sci-fi that sticks to what it is and doesn't stray into weird other versions of like fantasy elements or just other genres of films altogether. Like I can't stand this. If you like it, to each your own. I cannot stand romance sci-fi where the romance is the main thrust of it and the sci-fi is the vehicle to like get them together. Like time traveling films where he goes back to find her. I'm like, no, stop ruining sci-fi with schmaltzy crap. What
about like Her, the one where Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with an AI?
Loved it.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Complete, because that to me is like, that was the whole point was, and I think this is gonna happen, and I think we're on the precipice of it right now, falling in love with an AI, because it's so lifelike and so good at adapting and etc. etc. I think that was the pure sci-fi element of that film, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it. But then I think you get your sort of comeuppance for having thought that you were watching a romance,
right? With the way it ends,
yes.
Yeah. I get you.
Whereas when they just put, if that film was all about him getting with another girl and the sci-fi AI thing was a tag on that wasn't actually that important, but it just made it so that he could get with the girl better, I'd be like, this is a terrible film. But I like some really crap sci-fi films purely because the sci-fi element of them I think is good. Like talking to Tom Cruise and Oblivion, like I like what's it called? Live Die Repeat. Tomorrow.
Yeah, I think they tried to rebrand it as Live Die Repeat. It's called Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow, that was it, yeah.
But then it kind of became, I think at one point they even referred to it as Live Die Repeat : Edge of Tomorrow or something weird like that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like once it came out on home media and streaming, it was one of those things. Like I think they famously had in some regions a DVD or a Blu-ray where the box art was like Live Die Repeat in big bold letters and then Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow. Oh, see, that's it. You're right, because I was called it Edge of Tomorrow, and it was only later that I think I was like, oh, is it what? Is it Live Die Repeat? Yes, it was. It's those films with weird ass names where they're too long, and you think just keep it more simple. Keep it more simple. Why have you done this to yourself?
There's a film I'd be interested to know your thoughts on, kind of like whether or not it sits in that Her kind of category of. Because I quite like sci-fi romance films for some reason.
Right.
Like, did you ever see Never Let Me Go?
No.
It was a famous book, but then there was a movie adaptation with Keira Knightley and Kerry Mulligan and Andrew Garfield.
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't see it.
That's one where even describing like the reason the plot is somewhat interesting kind of spoils it. But that's a really interesting one. I'll say it because I want to say in the end they decided that in publicizing and marketing that film, they would acknowledge this because no one would go and see it if you didn't. But it's ostensibly about a love triangle between three characters, two women and a man, that plays out over a good portion of their life. That's kind of like the plot that's in the foreground. The plot that's in the background is that they learn at a certain point in their lives that they are actually clones that have been created to be like raised in the background to essentially like be harvested, almost like The Island.
Oh right, yeah, I was going to say, yeah,
like yeah. and so it's like a question of like how long are they going to live, and like whether the value of like love and relationships and stuff like that in that context, and with the time that they have, as well as there being this love triangle element that stems all the way from some kind of connections that were drawn up during childhood because they all go to school together through to later life. And the other one was came out last year called Fingernails, with Jesse Buckley and Riz Ahmed, and that's the one where it's set in, I don't know, a theoretical future or even a theoretical present, where we're doing a test that involves your fingernail can determine whether or not two people are actually in love. And it's like this flawless test of like, oh yeah, we've done the test and you guys are 100% in love. And it's like,
right,
yeah. And then all of a sudden, a character, Jesse Buckley's character, who is like in love with this other person, is like, well, what if I'm not? Can you love? What if I can love two people at once? It's like, well, no, we did the test.
Yeah, that sounds crap.
It's not as good as it could have been, but it wasn't crap. Is the Lobster's not really?
I'd say that is almost sci-fi. I think
sci-fi romance.
I almost would put it into sci-fi romance actually, because I suppose it's got the whole thing. They never address it, which is one of the sticking points for me about sci-fi romances. They never talk about the sci-fi; they just talk about the romance. But actually, the Lobster's fantastic. Really enjoyed the Lobster. There was one there was often sci-fi like low budget, a bit crap. The ones that you get because to get proper sci-fi films. But there was one with what is the actress's name? There's a recent one where she was in Doctor Who, the Amy Pond, like long ginger hair, and she's in Guardians of the Galaxy. She plays Nebula.
Gilead.
Yes. Karen Gilliam.
Yeah.
Gillingham?
Karen. I don't know how to pronounce that surname, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Karen Gillan, maybe?
Gillan. So and you reminded me of it then because you were saying about clones, but she's in a weird sci-fi film where she goes and gets herself cloned, and then the clone moves into her house and gets with her boyfriend. I think it's almost like...
Oh, it's called Jewel.
Yes, Jewel. I think
an A.
She's going to kill herself, if I remember rightly, but she feels bad about leaving, and so she clones herself, and so the clone goes to live her life so she can go and kill herself or something like that. But then she decides actually she doesn't want to kill herself, and so they say like, well, if you get this problem where you've got these two people who you can't have a clone and the original living at the same time. So the only way to sort it out is they have to fight to the death.
Right. Okay.
And it's just a weird film, and I quite like weird, crappy films like that. J.W. Foster in chat said The Lobster is terrible.
Oh, JW, come on.
No, to each their own. Like, I get it. I like a bunch of crap films, and I think other people like crap films.
I don't think The Lobster's crap. I think that Yorgos Lanthimos' work is polarizing and stilted, intentionally so. And I haven't loved everything he's done. But I don't know. I thought it was good. You just reminded me as well, talking about clones and you describing the plot to Jewel. The other week, I want to say, the trailer for Mickey 17, which is Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to Parasite, but also, I guess, based on the novel that I don't know if you've read, but I haven't either. But
is it a novel?
I'm looking. I've got it up here. The novel actually called Mickey 7. That came out in 2022.
Oh,
I guess Bong Joon-ho decided that he would add another 10 to it. The idea of a
is it Robert Pattinson?
It's Robert Pattinson, yeah, and he signs up to be a quote unquote expendable, an employee who takes on a job where they know they're going to die intentionally, and when one iteration dies, their body's regenerated with their memories intact, and a new one is made. And after he unintentionally survives one expedition, he ends up face to face with the previous one of him.
Yeah, that looks. I think that looks brilliant. I'm really looking forward to that. I didn't realize it was a novel. I'll have to dig that out. Yeah. I just finished
Mickey 7.
I just finished Ready Player 2. So I'm looking for something
nice.
to read.
Do you think that needs a film adaptation?
I would like to see a film adaptation of it. I see why there was a bit of a backlash apparently to Ready Player 2, like people basically saying it's it doesn't come anywhere near the first one. I kind of disagree. I think maybe what happened was the first one was quite novel, pun not intended, and so people were like, "Oh, this is amazing! What a great idea! Like all this retro stuff in here, and it's with VR, and it's what a great world, and all of that." But I think when he did the second book, it was very derivative, and it was very formulaic, and I think it was almost like a victim of the success of his first book, and he just was like, "Oh, I'll just do it again," and it. But I really enjoyed it. Like a lot of the nostalgia, it's pure nostalgia bait. The whole film is pure nostalgia bait, and I must admit, some of the writing in it was where the stories go. There was some stuff which completely threw me. Like some of the way some characters acted, I was just like, "Oh, this is going to happen, and that'll be quite cool." And then it just didn't, and I was like, "Oh no, that was just weird." He just wrote that really weirdly. So okay. Huh. But I would like to see an adaptation. It's also annoying because it's one of those ones that undoes a lot of what happens in the first book, to get to a point where the second book has a point.
Okay, interesting.
So, which is annoying. Like a lot of the characters' relationships are kind of undone, so that they have to go through the whole making friends again, which is a bit annoying.
A bit like what we were saying about Deadpool, almost.
Yes.
Every film needs to reset because they need something to work towards.
Yeah.
Interesting. Plus, there's the added caveat of, whilst there are plenty of other capable filmmakers out there, you're probably not going to get Steven Spielberg back this time.
No, in which case, you don't want a less good book with probably an adaptation which isn't going to be as good, with a director who's probably not as good. The compounding problems. It's gonna be Starship Troopers 2, not Starship Troopers. Let's put it like that.
When in fact all we wanted was RoboCop 2. It's that simple.
Yeah, or Aliens, or something good.
Aliens.
But do you know what? Before we go on to any other little news stories, Jamie, I know you've been playing something that I want to hear about.
I have. I've been playing Silent Hill 2. And I regrettably haven't finished it yet, so we're not looking at the complete picture in terms of my thoughts and feelings. But you might not be surprised to hear that I'm making my way through Silent Hill relatively slowly. Let's just say it's taking me, maybe minutes at a time to round every corner and open every door. Such is the nature of the effect that Silent Hill 2 is having on my digestive system. I haven't shit myself yet, but it's been close. Touched cloth a couple of times. So no, I'm about halfway through Silent Hill 2 Remake, in case that it was not obvious to anyone out there. The recently released remake from Bloober Team, published by Konami, that I was kind of motivated to pick up based on the really surprisingly positive reception that it had. I think, for a long while there, Bloober Team being given the job of remaking, one of the more beloved, not just one of the more beloved horror games of all time and one of the most acclaimed horror games of all time, but a horror game that's really of its time, where some of the decisions and design choices that were made almost as a result of drawbacks of the hardware and where gaming was at the time ended up being celebrated features. That classic catch-22 about, hey, what if we made sure the game performed better by reducing draw distances, and what if we reduced draw distances by making the town completely enveloped by the world's thickest fog? And it's like, well, what does the modern equivalent of that look like? And some people are really testy and touchy about seeing games like that they maybe grew up with, or something like that, messed about with, or having their reputations tarnished or whatever. And so to hear that, whether newcomers or sort of hardcore Silent Hill 2 fans of yore were both accepting this remake with relative open arms, and actually looks to be maybe the best game that Bloober have ever made. I was on board, and I'm having a good time. Joking aside, I am making my way through it. It's definitely scary. But I don't think it's the scariest game I've ever played.
Okay.
But it's because, I guess, and I know I'm stating the obvious here for a lot of people who are super familiar with Silent Hill, the Silent Hill franchise, I guess, beyond just 2. But it really is the tone and the atmosphere that the game creates. It's
Right.
that kind of
Not just repeat
almost
jump scares to try and get you.
exactly, and they do slip a couple of jump scares in there at times. Some of them, slightly more orchestrated or scripted than others, and some of them that come about somewhat naturally given the sort of the behavior of some of the enemy types. And I think Bloober deserves some credit for that, but that kind of almost like not quite seems stupid to call them like procedural jump scares, but like jump scares that can come around not as a result of a direct scripting of a scenario, but as a result of the behavior of the enemies and their being able to predict the behavior of players, I guess, at certain points. But yeah, it's that really kind of like overbearing and uncomfortable tone that permeates everything from the enemy designs to the kind of the story and the characters that you meet and the way that characters interact, the town itself, the soundtrack, the sound design. There's this constant just like permeating sense of just dread that can be almost exhausting at times.
Right.
Like I'm finding myself playing the game in short bursts because it's heavy in a weird way, which is different to outright scary, but it occupies, I guess, a similar part of my brain. And
it can be, but like, it can be tiring, like you say. Like that can drain you to a point where you just like, I just need a break. I can't play any more of this right now. I need to go and do something else. I need to like zone out. Like I can't be under this level of stress with this level of cortisol running through my body for hours on end.
Exactly, it's exactly that. Like you watched how I reacted to Resident Evil 7 firsthand back in the day, right?
I did, yeah.
And you saw me jump out my skin at multiple times. And like you think back to Resident Evil 7 and like no one was describing Resident Evil 7 as a comedy at the time. But you think back to like that scene when you're at the dinner table with the family and the way they interact with each other, some of the voice lines the dad says, like when like that moment where you're talking to the policeman in the garage or whatever it is, and all of a sudden like a shovel comes through from behind and cuts his face in half, and like it is darkly funny and in a weird way, and that precedes a fight where in a garage where you end up like getting into a car that's stuck in this garage and like ramming him to death and stuff like that. There's none of that humor in Silent Hill 2, whether it's the other characters that you meet or, like I said, the way that you interact with them, the story that becomes more and more, well, in some cases becomes more and more kind of like obtuse and obscure, and in other cases becomes clearer in terms of what's actually going on. It doesn't really let up, and so it's not a game where you can kind of like breathe a sigh of relief that often, or have a chuckle, or anything like that. It's just kind of like, no, you keep going, and all that atmosphere is going to be relentless, and you're just going to have to deal with that. But it works. It works. Yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I should finish it in the next week, and I think it'll be up there in terms of top 10. I genuinely think so. I'm having a good
time. We had a question in chat. So, what do you think of the melee combat?
It's a little bit fiddly. I'd say that it controls slightly better than it looks. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's fairly simple. Not criminally simple, but perhaps surprisingly simple for how much melee combat there is. Like anyone who's watched any footage of the first couple of hours of that game will know that that James, the protagonist, is always armed with some kind of melee weapon, whether it's sort of this 2x4 wooden plank or later a steel pipe. And whilst item scarcity and ammo scarcity isn't a big problem from as far as I've seen, there is always this feeling of like, hey, certain enemies you should probably just kill with melee, just so you don't waste bullets, right? And it's fine. It kind of works in sort of like a loose sort of like three swing kind of combo system where before long you start to realize when James takes breaks or when the breaks in his swings are long enough that an enemy can attack. And then you've got a dodge button on circle, which is new from what I understand in the remake. And there's a subtle element to kind of like occasionally reading enemies' tells and knowing when they're about to like lunge forward and dodging that. And then later on, you get slightly tougher enemies who aren't really designed to be taken on using melee combat, but sometimes you have to because of your proximity to them, and they can kind of push through, or some of their animations aren't interrupted by your melee, and that I guess keeps things a little bit fresh. But but I'd say it's fine. I'd say it's serviceable and it's crunchy. This is a game like many other games in the horror genre where you don't always know if something's dead, and so if you continue to press R2, that's the melee in this game is essentially if you press R2 while not holding L2, you'll do a melee attack rather than shooting. Right. James will continue to whack the thing. He will either whack the thing on the ground with his melee weapon, or just do a Dead Space style stamp,
head stomp,
or stomp. Yeah, exactly. Which is always comes paired with the most like aggressive, over the top tennis style yelp or scream. So to the point where sometimes when you're angry, especially if you come home from work, you've had a bad day, you're just mashing R2 and James just stomping in the skull of this like nurse and just going like with every stamp. And it's like, do you know what? That feels crunchy, and maybe I should feel a little bit more sick in the head for what I'm doing, but I don't.
There's something nice when you walk up to like a body on the floor in one of those kind of games, and you, like you said, you can whack loads of them, stamp on them, and nothing's happened for a few, and then you stamp on one, and then it goes, ah! And you're like, yes, I got one.
Exactly.
I
knew you were going to come back to life.
Yeah,
exactly.
That feels really good.
It's cool. And you know what? Like, I don't know if you felt this way over the years at All Time Gaming, because Silent Hill 2 was a game that came up a lot on lists, whether it's for like stories or horror games or twists or whatever. But it's nice, albeit through a remake, sure, but it's nice to finally know what people were talking about for all those years.
Right.
And have seen some of it firsthand, like albeit through the lens of Bloober Team. And it's got some really, and some of these won't be selling points for people, I get that, but it's got some really interesting like design ideas in terms of how to keep you on your toes. Do you remember in The Last of Us Part 2, there's a sequence where you're playing as Ellie. I think she's just left like the theater on her own, and you're in this apartment block and you find a crafting table, and you've been taught up to that point, hey, like crafting tables are safe because you're in a menu essentially, and you start crafting, and all of a sudden you hear like something happening behind you, like scurrying, and then all of a sudden you get ambushed while you're using a crafting table, like you're in a menu, and it's group. Silent Hill 2 has some ideas like that where like maybe you pick something up, or maybe you're inspecting something, and like you're hearing noises and you're like, oh shit, I'm actually not safe. And that ties to the idea that like, hey, the map is a physical thing that you use, and the game doesn't pause when you use the map.
Right.
And this is a game where you're going to be checking where you're going a lot. Or like other little ideas where you pick up a radio very early on, and the radio emits a static noise every time you're within the certain proximity of an enemy. And you're like, that feels like a weird thing to give someone in a game, especially a game that in certain sequences and in certain environments plays with darkness a lot. It can be incredibly dark, and essentially your cone of vision is whatever your flashlight can light up. And you're thinking, why give me a radio that tells me if something's nearby? And then you come across these bugs, like imagine them as like cockroaches that are maybe like 5 times the size of a cockroach. And they're like, oh, they're technically enemies, and they can do a little bit of damage, but you just stomp on them and they squish and die, and they make the radio go off. And you're like, why would they include that? And then all of a sudden, you find yourself in a pitch black apartment, and with just a piece of wood is all you're armed with. The radio's going crazy, and then you see a bug, and you think, oh, thank God. And you go over there and you squish it, and the radio doesn't stop. And now and in that moment, oh, that's what the fuck they were doing. A bunch of really cool ideas. Kind of happy for Bloober Team, who I think there'd always been good ideas in some of their misses, that now they've got a hit, and I like it. So, yeah,
no, that's wicked. That is very cool. Very cool indeed. I will briefly touch on a game that I've been playing, because we've already talked about it a bit. It is Astro Bot. You played it already. You've already finished it, and I've been a little late to the party, but I'm glad I'm at the party. Yes, very good. Charming, colourful, everything you would expect from Astro Bot. Like, plays very well. Very good level design. A lot of the additions that they've added to this after Astro's Playroom, I think, work really well. It feels much more of obviously this is a game, whereas Astro's Playroom was more like a way to sort of get used to the PlayStation 5 and the DualSense controller. This is a much more coherent game from start to finish. Like, it feels like it. So, some of it feels a little, I feel like I'm doing a lot of. I'm not doing a lot. Sometimes I feel like there's a little bit too much busy work. In some levels, like I'm a little bit like, meh. I'm not a bit over going back through this level again to find this one dude who's,
Oh,
you know,
okay, yeah, sure.
and I have immediately if I go back into a level, you can get the bird and you can use it to find whatever you've missed, and I'm like, give me the goddamn bird. I don't really want to like spend 25 minutes trying to hunt for what was it I had the other day? It was a log that you had to glide over with your laser feet to cut the log to reveal a puzzle piece, and I had no idea. There was no way I was going to figure that out. Just playing as I was just playing the game, it was a bit random.
Yeah.
But
so are you replaying levels in some cases right after you finish them, or are you usually giving yourself a bit of a buffer?
Usually give me a bit of a buffer.
Okay,
so
good.
I'm in the last, I suppose, galaxy, I guess. So I've done 5, I think. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm in the final one. I tell you what I love though. I love them because I hate them. The extra levels you get, which are like the square, the X, the triangle, and the circle, where there is no checkpoint. It is if you do not do it first go, you start again. Oh my! There's one in particular. I must have done it 30 times.
Oh yeah.
And I can't do it. Like I'm just like, this is impossible, and I'm pulling. I literally feel like I'm going to pull my hair out.
Yes, I know. I don't know the exact level you're talking about, but I'm sure if we looked it up, I'd have had the same thing. And let me tell you, Jonesy, there's more to come. all optional, of course, but there's more to come.
So I think I've done nearly all of them, but there's a couple I've still got to do, and I'm pretty sure what was the one I'm on. I think it's it must be. I think it's an X one. Is it an X
cross, as the game likes
cross
to remind us?
But it's one where you
incorrectly.
So it's one where I'm pretty sure. So effectively, what you do is you're chasing the little alien who's taken the bot off, and you've got to get to the end of the level with the bot. But then on this one, you have to like run along, jump onto a moving treadmill that has electric that's lighting up. It's called like in rhythm or something like that. This mission's about rhythm. It's like everything's happening to the beat, and then there's some cross thing which is spinning, and these big steel ones which are rolling, and I can do like certain bits I can just nail every time. Then I'll get to another bit which I have nailed before and just die for no apparent reason. And then I'll get back to the beginning, and then I won't be able to do the bit I've already done 50 times. And I'm like, oh my God, I was getting so annoyed. But I love it. I love that kind of old school. No, you just have to get good. You're not doing this until you're. Yeah. I quite like that, and so it's infuriating but brilliant. There's a lot of bots in this, which is very cool. I think maybe there's too many of the random little bots, but I get it. Like I get it. It's so rewarding when you get back to your home planet and you see all these little bots appear and they're running around and you can use them for stuff and whatever. That's really cool. And then populating your world with them sitting around doing stuff from games, I think is just very.
And going to see their animations after you found their backgrounds or their props or whatever from the. Yeah. Have you liked the... Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, and all the other little add-ons that you get, like the Safari and the Color Your Controller and the all those little things are such nice little rewarding touches for you to achieve as you're playing the game, which I thoroughly enjoying.
Totally. No, I couldn't agree more. What have you thought of the themed End of Galaxy levels? Have you liked them?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Some of the... Where they reuse... the special thing that you get, like I think they reuse the chicken one quite a few times.
I more meant the ones where like a game invades the level and it's like, this is an Ape Escape level. Oh, sorry.
No, those fantastic. Yeah, I think that I didn't at first. I think the first 2 galaxies, I didn't realize that was necessarily what was happening, and then by the third one, I was like, "Oh, we're going to do this every time." Okay, that's cool. I know. Yeah, the.
How good is
God of War?
One?
God of War 1, it was phenomenal. Like immediately, I was like, okay, that is the sickest. They're not going to be able to beat that. But
there's a point early on in the God of War level where I knew we were just in the safest hands imaginable, which is when they do the Astro version of Kratos having to squeeze through a gap in the wall while it hides a load thing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit where you there's an enemy, and the way that you get up onto to get like a puzzle piece or whatever is you have to freeze the enemy of the axe, jump on his head, and then jump up. And I was just like, okay, they're not just doing it for look. They're actually like leaning into this, and I think is very cool.
Yeah, yeah, so good.
Yeah,
And a hit with the Wians.
yes, I've been told I'm not allowed to finish the game because before my 8-year-old has a chance. That's what he keeps saying. Before I've had a chance to catch up to you, but he is like 2 worlds behind me. So what he really means,
separate profiles.
Yeah, we all have. Me, the 6-year-old, and the 8-year-old, we all have our own profiles.
Oh, beautiful.
So we're all playing it at the same time. But there's lots of, all right, you've had an hour. It's time for you to let your brother have a go now. It's one of those. But yeah, the big one's 2 levels, 2 worlds behind me, and he's like, no, you can't. Can you tonight before he went to bed? He said, promise you're not going to play any more Astro Bot. Promise you're not going to play any more Astro Bot before I can play some more. I'm like, why do you want to finish it before me so badly? And he's just like, promise. So all right.
Oh man, you need to create like a secret PSN with your own saves.
I've got my own saves, and they've got their own PSNs, so we're all separate. But he is asking me where I'm up to.
Oh, I see.
He's like, "Where are you up to? Where are you up to? Have you got to this? Have you got to that boss? Have you beaten that boss yet? Have you beaten that boss?" And I'm like, "Yes, I've beaten that boss. Yes, I've beaten the genie. Yes, I'm like here." And he's like, "Oh, I've just beaten the genie. I must be 2 worlds behind you." Oh, okay. And so yeah, it's cute. But he just wants to beat me, so I'm going to let him. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to then platinum it while he's not paying attention, and then I'll be like, "Well, I platinumed it, you man."
Hell yeah. The next time you've got like a weekend at home and they're like at their grandparents or something like that, you just smash through it. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. But no, very good. Glad I got it. Not bothered that I waited to join the party. But there we go.
Nice.
I could have segued nicely if I'd have gone first, actually, and talked about Astro Bot and let you talk about Silent Hill 2. But I want to move on to our next story, which is about another scary game, which is why I would have made a nice segue. Because Sega have announced Alien Isolation, the sequel. We don't know what it's called yet. But the announcement came on Monday to coincide with the 10th anniversary of Alien Isolation. The sequel is in early development at Creative Assembly, and it is being directed by Al Hope, who also directed the original. So it's in a safe pair of hands, which is very good. You've played you've not played the Alien Isolation.
I have not.
Because we're both in the same. We're both in the same situation, which is that we're not the best with scary games, and this is one of the ultimate scary. Like you just get scared. There's nothing you can do. You either survive or you die. There is no fighting. Yeah. There is no melee combat. There is no 2x4 to beat someone to death with.
Yeah. That's the key differentiator, right? In some of these games, it's the same with the Outlast games and some of the Amnesia games. Not all of them, but it's like that. Are you empowered to defend yourself? Like, is there an element where when you get over the fright, you are, how you have direct control over a character that can fight back against these malevolent forces? And when the answer is no, it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. I'm right with you. Which there was those elements of. I mean, we talked about it being sort of having comedy elements, but Resi 7 had those elements where you were walking away or you were running away, and the dad. I always remember the dad keeps coming at you from different places, yes. And as we said, it was much more comic. But even that level of you cannot interact with him, you cannot fight him, you cannot go backwards. You just have to get away until you get to a safe place. Yeah, I mean, ramp that up to 50 with Alien Isolation. Like you said, there's no humour when an alien's trying to bite your head off.
Yeah. And the way that some people talked about the alien in terms of its design, how some people... I'm not sure to what extent any of this was ever kind of like verified, but the idea that like the alien might somehow get smarter or more aware of the tricks you use as the game goes on. I was like, that sounds like the opposite of what I want. I would just be sitting in vents or under tables or whatever it is. Even the enemies in the game that aren't, the xenomorph itself, like what's the name in the Alien universe for the weird white
facehugger
androids?
Oh no,
the weird like completely blank.
I don't know.
They've got some strange name. I'll look it up. And by strange, I don't mean like otherworldly. I mean like weirdly normal name, like a average Joe or something weird like that. Yeah, even those that I think in some cases can be killed if you decide to use enough of your, your ammo, for example, on them. I find them uh, unsettling, disconcerting.
Yeah, and I think that they did apparently, I should say, they did a fantastic job with that game and making it feel like you're in that movie. You know, like you're in Alien, and that it is terrifying, and there's nothing you can do, and this superior predator which is hunting you, and what the hell do you do? I'm pretty sure it's on Xbox Game Pass at the moment, so I've been meaning to finally, after 10 years, jump in, but I don't know if I'm there yet. I'll give it a try, and I'll see how I get on, and see if my wife still jokes about the fact that when Dead
Please
Space,
stream it.
I mean, it wouldn't be. I think I'd be really boring if I don't. I think I'd just be like
Jonesy,
quietly
you could sit
terrified
there in dead silence, quietly terrified, and I would still love every second of it.
All right, I'll have a go. I'll stream some. I'll do it. I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it at Halloween, like nearer to Halloween, like in the dark.
Yeah.
And turn the lights off.
Absolutely.
Shit myself up.
By the way, working Joe was the name of the
Working
android, like synthetic humanoids. Yeah, but yeah, super happy for fans of Alien Isolation, I guess, and fans of Alien in general, and also like kind of happy for Creative Assembly, because this feels like I should clarify that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, at least if memory serves, that there were layoffs and redundancies there at some point this year, which is of course incredibly sad. But it felt like they needed a boost, some positive news after, because of course they were the development team behind Hyenas, the game that the multiplayer FPS that Sega cancelled after 7 years in development, just before it was meant to come out. So nice that CA are kind of, have something that fans are already looking forward to, and that hopefully serves them well. And also slightly awkward for IGN, because it just gets people talking about their infamous review of Alien Isolation once again, and that's something that I'm sure that both as a website and Ryan McCaffrey himself is desperate to forget about.
I don't think I ever remember what happened with the review with IGN.
Ryan McCaffrey, who I think is still on the IGN staff, infamously didn't particularly like Alien Isolation. Which, to be fair, like there were other people out there who weren't massively hot on it, but he gave it a 5.9 out of 10, and it became one of like the poster boys for IGN getting
scores wrong.
Exactly. It sounds stupid because what I'm essentially is saying an IGN employee having the wrong opinion, which just it doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's what I mean. An IGN employee or outsource or an IGN freelancer who has an opinion that doesn't lie within the common consensus. That's really all that happened.
Right. Well, from a game series which is hopefully going to maintain its form to a game series which is hopefully going to return to form, Halo's 343 has rebranded to Halo Studios, and they have confirmed that multiple games will be coming, but it's no longer going to be using the Slipspace engine that it was using before, and it is in fact going to be using the Unreal Engine. You are a lot more of a Halo guy than I ever was. Is this a good move, do you think, on the face of it, moving to the Unreal Engine?
I think overall, yes, it's a net positive. I think the only real argument that could be made for it being a negative thing is that the Slipspace engine was a unique and bespoke, tailor-made in-house engine, and those are increasingly becoming a rarity these days. And so, like, you could make the argument that to have one less engine like that out there in any capacity, and another developer who is working with Epic and working with Unreal, kind of makes things a little bit more standard and a little bit more unified in a way that could lead to kind of like less variety, I guess, over time.
That's a really good point. You don't want everything ending up running on the same engine. Is at some point you're going to maybe get games of a type maybe looking too similar.
Right, exactly. Like, yeah, you don't want a world where in 15, 20 years it's like everything from 0 up to this point is on Unity, and everything above that point is on Unreal or something weird like that. Not that those games would all look the same or feel the same or play
But
the
there would
same
be
or anything like
you
that.
can imagine that there would be genres that would. So, for example, Unreal, when Unreal Engine 5 first came out, you had a lot of games which utilised their sort of like photorealistic world building. I'm thinking of things
Yeah.
like Forspoken and a bunch of other games in a similar kind of ilk. They didn't look the same, but at the same time, there was a familiarity in certain
Yes.
genres of games.
Yeah. Um, and I think like you say, that will change and it will become more varied over time. But I think it's also just an inevitability. I think we've seen this at countless studios and especially publishers that own multiple studios over the years. We saw it, with EA and Frostbite, and we've seen it with Ubisoft and is it Snowdrop?
Yes, I think
Yes,
so. Yeah.
Snowdrop. And in some cases, some of that has been walked back. There's been some admission, like for example, with EA and Frostbite in the past, there's been some admission that like, hey, we forced developers and teams and like I said, genres onto engines that they shouldn't have been on, and they've walked some of that stuff back. And like it'll be interesting to see Dragon Age come out in just a couple of weeks now and see hopefully the improvements that have been made after everything that went wrong with Inquisition and the engine choice there. That's less of a problem with UE. But the reason I think a lot of companies value this is that like when companies are growing, and companies up until last year were mostly growing, when you're acquiring studios, you're acquiring employees and you're acquiring talent. And talent can still, even in this kind of the games industry with the state that it's in, be an extremely valuable thing. And the
Yep.
way that you maximize what talent and the benefits you get from talent is have them being able to share their knowledge and share their learnings. And the shortcut to having it as and the fast track to a way to enable people to share their learnings and their knowledge is by having them all working on the same piece of tech. And there was a lot of stories going back to EA and their implementation of Frostbite across the board. There was a lot of stories about how DICE, who were kind of like the Frostbite experts at the time, had to almost be like a support helpline for the BioWares and for the BioWares of the world. And when you bring something like UE into the fold, you eliminate that problem, and you also take upkeep of an engine out of house. The problem, Slipspace has been around since the first Halo, and like you don't get one engine that essentially these engines change a lot over the time. They change massively, but you don't get an engine that technically had a hand in making Halo Combat Evolved and had a hand in Halo Infinite without that engine changing and evolving and having lots of other elements and things tacked onto it. When that's your own engine, when that's your in-house engine, you have a team that's doing that work, and that is money that you're paying to keep a fundamentally old piece of tech relevant. And in many cases, and this was supposedly the case with Slipspace 2, it actually just becomes impossible, and you run into tech debt problems where development becomes harder and takes longer because you're committed to running you're working with an engine that itself is outdated in many ways. So I'm sure while it's sad to see one more unique and bespoke engine sort of like fall by the wayside, I'm sure there are plenty within 343 that are excited to work with Unreal. I'm sure there are people at Microsoft and Xbox Studios that are happy to have Unreal becoming more unified in its usage across their studios. It's not across the board. Like I don't think Playground I think Playground are still using like Forza and Horizon Tech for Fable as just a one example. But there will be other UE games, Gears, E-Day, and all that kind of stuff. So that that's valuable there. You're increasing shared knowledge within a family. And also Xbox fans won't like hearing it, but the other thing that Unreal Engine 5 makes life a lot simpler with is porting. It's impossible to know where Xbox Game Studios are at, when it comes to the availability of once exclusive and first party software and its availability on other platforms. But if there's a future where Halo games release on PlayStation, having it developed in Unreal Engine 5 makes life a hell of a lot easier than trying to get Slipspace running on a PS5 dev kit. So all kinds of pros and cons, but I can see there being net positives internally and externally. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course we should touch on the fact that one of the reasons they probably have gone from Slip Space to moving over to UE5 is because the issues they had with Halo Infinite, and some of the issues that they had was partly blamed for the issues with that system and with that engine, and the delay, and some of the problems they had, I guess, when it first came out and how bad it looked, and people saying, "Oh, look at this, doesn't look great." It's probably a lot easier to when you're on, like you said, when you go over to UE5, and a lot of those problems are probably ironed out for you, and you haven't got to worry as much about sorting out a lot of that crap in-house. We actually did get to see some not game footage, but we did get to see some technical test footage during the recent Halo World Championship tournament of what Halo could look like running on the Unreal Engine. So if you want to check that out, it's got to be online somewhere. I haven't seen it, so I don't know, but I'm sure it's somewhere. Like, don't tell me it looks like the original trailer for Halo Infinite.
No, it just looks like Halo.
Oh, okay, there you go. So,
what if I told you that some of the footage has Master Chief in it, and he still looks like Master Chief, although perhaps ever so slightly shinier?
I do like shiny, to be fair, so that's pretty good.
There's a nice sheen and shine to that armor now.
Right. I should also touch on because you've done some lovely research for me, so I should also mention that.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
I will briefly, because it looks like the cancellation of Halo Infinite 2 happened partly because supposedly because a change in leadership in 2022, which led to the decision to go to UE5 from Slip Space. So there you go.
Yeah,
big moves.
Big moves, and Halo Infinite was cool from what I played of it, and I have admiration for 343 really kind of taking it wasn't a big leap of faith, but it felt like the biggest attempt they'd made thus far to put their own mark on that franchise. In this post Bungie Halo world we live in, and seeing them tackle some sort of technically open world stuff or open zone or whatever the terminology you want to use. Actually suited the Halo formula more than I thought it would. I can still see why you'd want to not just adopt Unreal Engine, but also perhaps move away from the 343 name. That's the other thing that's going on here. Like it's a name
Halo
that
Studios,
that's a name that that Microsoft and Xbox have been happy to have front and center in Halo development since 4 now. And that they're walking away from that. That's a big deal, and it does suggest that at least internally, perhaps they believe that there is some negative baggage associated with the 343 name. So it's going to be interesting to see just how much of a fresh start this is for what is still one of the biggest FPS franchises out there on its day. Yes,
yeah, very true, very true. All right, I'm going to rattle through the next story, just because it doesn't.
You don't have to if you don't want. Don't feel because it's there that you have to do it. If something interests you, say it. If it doesn't, then we've got a podcast, baby.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Then we'll leave that. Should we talk about?
I want to talk about what you want to talk about, and if you want to talk about it, it's worth. If Jonesy, I've got a saying when it comes to the SuperShow podcast. If you wanna say it, then people want to hear it.
All right, then I reckon we leave it. don't think. I'll tell you what. I'll mention the title for the next thing. No, yeah. Let me. I want to mention the next thing, and I won't bother about mentioning the final thing we were going to talk about. Even though they're both interesting, but this is more interesting. Splinter Cell has not been cancelled. The remake is not being cancelled over at Ubisoft. We need to. Do you know why? Because it's nice to have a good story about Ubisoft, and the fact that it's not being cancelled, despite rumours claiming that it is being cancelled, is something that we can mention in Ubisoft's corner for once. Apparently it is being developed under the codename North. In addition to the codename, sources have confirmed that the game is using the Snowdrop engine. We're talking about engines again, look at that. Snowdrop, of course, has been used to make Division 2, Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, Star Wars Outlaws. So you might be saying, maybe move on from Snowdrop. But they're not. They're making it on that, and it's all good. And it could
Snowdrop can look amazing. It just hasn't recently.
Yeah, exactly. Of course they can. Like you said, just because in the past it's been used for older games or whatever, it doesn't mean it's still going to.
Do you know what? Weirdly enough, I loved the work that Massive did with Snowdrop on the Division games,
Yes, of
and
course.
and haven't liked it so much with Avatar or Star Wars, I must admit.
Yeah,
Even though a lot of people praised Avatar quite heavily, it was Digital Foundry's best looking game of the year, actually, weirdly enough, but I didn't see it myself.
and there can be so much implementation, and the way you use an engine can vary massively. Of course,
Of course.
it can. So it doesn't. Yeah, just because one game doesn't look as good or does look good but doesn't play as well doesn't mean another game's going to be the same. But there is murmurings that game could come out in 2026, but gaming as it is, we have no idea.
I have no idea. Do you know what? If you want a little bit more when it comes to positive Ubisoft nuggets,
Yes.
I think there were also some suggestions from Tom Henderson, who is usually very
Tomo. A little
reliable.
bit of Tomo.
Exactly, usually very reliable when it comes to Ubisoft. He came out and said, and not necessarily speaking in code, but it doesn't mean much. But basically said, hey, take this with a pinch of salt. But my understanding is the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake isn't something that's like miles away. It's actually closer than you might think.
That could I hold.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag was very good.
Yes, it was.
A remake of Assassin's Creed Black Flag could be incredible if they get it right.
It could.
I think the things that they struggled with on that game, they've had plenty of time and other games using the same kind of, I mean, to be fair, like Skull and Bones isn't a great thing to think about when you're talking about that, but they've got a lot of the stuff with like that wasn't the best, or maybe could have been improved upon, I should say, with like the sailing and stuff. They've improved on since, and they've iterated on, and with a game that could look as beautiful as Black Flag game could look with a remake.
Yes,
I'm very hopeful for that.
Sure, same. And like you mentioned, Skull and Bones. Like Skull and Bones was a disaster if you look at its sort of like development and release as in its entirety. But when Skull and Bones came out, there was no one saying, "Hey, I played Skull and Bones," and like the ships handle like crap or firing the cannons feels bad. Like for all intents and purposes, some parts of Skull and Bones work. It's just they need to make sure the parts that don't make their way into Black Flag Remake. Speaking of Ubisoft remakes, Jonesy, do Black Flag Remake and Splinter Cell Remake make it out the door before the Sands of Time remake?
I knew is what you were going to say. Yes. Yeah, of course they do.
Right.
Of course they do.
What date did they put on that at their stupid shitty...
Wasn't it something crazy like 2027? Wasn't it 27?
Maybe I don't remember. I'm about to. I'll look it up, but 2026.
Oh, 26, which seems insane.
Because they did that during the summer, right? Which is like, hey, here's a teaser trailer for a game we've technically already showed you gameplay of, and now we're coming back to tell you that it's 2 years away, and we've essentially restarted development.
It's bad. You know what this means? We're never going to get the whole trilogy again, because it's going to take them 10 years to make the Sands of Time, and they're going to be like, should we make two towers? Is it? What is it called?
That's
Lord of the Rings. Is it two?
It was
Warrior Within.
Warrior Within, and then the two thrones.
They got two thrones. That's what I was thinking of.
And then the one that everyone forgets because it came out after the cell shaded one, which is the Forgotten Sands. We've had this conversation before.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a weird one where like they did Sands of Time, Warrior Within, the two thrones. They took a few years off, did the cell shaded one, which lots of people liked. Jonesy famously hated. Then took a few years off again, and then came back with another not cell shaded one that didn't make it. That was never as popular as the trilogy, which was called the Forgotten Sands.
I worry now though that where we're at, the remake is not. We're getting to a weird point where I think games like Silent Hill 2 and Resi 1 and stuff like that, I think when you remake those, you're taking an older game that's very different, and you're updating it to modern age, and people are going, oh, amazing. I worry that when you're starting to get into that sort of like middling era of linear third-person action games, that actually remakes of them might not be... They might just miss. Like, you might play them and be like, oh, okay, it was fine. But they're never going to make you have the same reaction to like playing Resident Evil 1 as a remake and going, oh, wow, my goodness, this was amazing. This was incredible. I love what they've done with it. Like, can they have that much of an effect? Can they do that much? They'd have to kind of go from God of War, like realistically, it has to go from like God of War trilogy to the new God of War. Do you see what I mean? Like how much they change it and how different the feel of the remakes are. And I don't think that's going to happen,
But I
especially
think
not with Ubi.
that is happening. Like that, like you mentioned Resident Evil, that happened to all of them.
But you see what I mean? Like the move goes.
It's just happened to Silent Hill 2.
But I think those games are much easier to make that move. When you take a game like Sands of Time, it's so linear and it's so it's a platformer, it's really linear. I can't see how it doesn't end up feeling like was it Broken Crown? What was the 2D
Lost Crown?
Lost Crown. Yeah. I don't see how it doesn't end up feeling more like a Lost Crown than it does like a Resident Evil 1 remake or a Silent Hill 2 remake. Maybe I'm narrow-minded because they're going to be totally fine. I don't know.
Well, no, I'm not going to. You're not going to get me to say that. But I don't know. I think there's a little bit more wiggle room there than you're perhaps allowing them. Again, like it's a 21-year-old game, and I think even just I think even a strong visual refresh and some new. I do know what you mean. It's one of the things we joke about. Whether the more modern you get, the more certain fundamental gameplay design sort of like principles or pillars got established, and the less things changed over time. And Sands of Time was definitely encroaching on that as far as like a third person action platformer goes. But I do think there's wiggle room there.
I hope so.
Yeah, I mean, again, if PlayStation can remaster, if we're at the place where we've got Horizon Zero Dawn remaster and Until Dawn remake releasing within weeks of each other, we can go back 21 years.
You are right. You're of course right. And do you know what? They probably will do something not even that crazy, but will make a huge difference. And you're like, okay, I'm so glad they did this.
I hope so. I think a good remake is just as much a fun opportunity to kind of put your own spin on things and try and find a reason to tell stories again and to release games again, as much as it is a reason to be beholden to the original and to give people the experience that they imagined they were having when they reflect on it, which is never the case. That's the best possible remake, right? It looks and plays like the way it does in my head, even though that game's 30 years old, and also all the new things they added or all the things they changed totally make sense given modern gameplay conventions.
Yes.
And standards. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. Well, something which doesn't need a remake. It's the Super Show podcast. And we're done.
So what you're saying is we have to come up with a whole bunch of new news stories next week.
We do indeed, because that is the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Jamie, so much for co-hosting.
Thank you.
We will see you again very soon with hopefully more news stories. Hopefully more big, interesting news stories. We won't be fishing around for small stories, but we'll see. We'll see how we get on. Cheers.